Nikolay peered unhappily at his plate, devoid of any meat-filled pasta. "Is this what you call dinner?" he grumbled at his wife, Katya. Katya replied calmly, trying to appease him. "We don't have enough money for meat." Her words did little to soothe Nikolay's growing anger. "Where did all our money go? Did you spend it on worthless things again? I just gave you my paycheck recently." Katya glanced down at her neglected nails, sighing softly before responding in her usual composed manner. "You gave me your paycheck 3 weeks ago, and I used it for groceries. I used my own paycheck to pay the bills and the loan. I didn't buy anything unnecessary for myself." Nikolay grew even more frustrated. "You say that, but how can I believe you?" Silently, Katya began eating her meager meal. She had grown fed up with the constant arguments and her husband's dissatisfaction. The perpetual financial struggles and his refusal to seek better employment weighed heavily on her. "You need to work harder if you want to earn more money," he shouted. "Am I expected to toil like a horse all day long? Maybe you should cut back on your salon expenses." "Well, I'm already working 2 jobs, even though I'm not a horse either," Katya calmly replied. "What kind of work do you think I do? Sitting and chatting with chickens? It's not as easy as you make it out to be. Perhaps you should try finding a job like mine, where you get paid to sit around and do nothing." Katya had some savings set aside, but she was saving up for a new coat. It wasn't because she wanted one, but rather because she felt embarrassed to show up at work in her old, worn-out coat. She tried her best to hide the flaws in the fabric, sewing on buttons and patches. However, it was clear to anyone that it was time for a replacement. The next day, Katya went to the store and purchased a chicken, using the money she had set aside. She tried to console herself, thinking that it was nothing because she was expecting a bonus that month, which she planned to add to their savings. However, her husband was unimpressed with the chicken. He looked at the dish his wife cooked from it with distaste and silently left the table, indicating that he had no intention of eating the unappetizing meal. Nicholas went to his mother's house after work and had dinner there, claiming that his wife had spent all their money on a manicure and there was no food left at home to eat. His mother disapproved of his wife's spending habits and felt sorry that her son had chosen someone who was not financially responsible. She served him a rich pot of borscht, which she had cooked in hopes that it would last for a week, since she was also trying to save money. The cost of medication had risen so much that they had to decide between buying food or receiving proper medical treatment. On payday, Nikolay only gave his wife half of his paycheck. When questioned about it, he explained that he needed a new winter jacket because the one he had been wearing for the past 2 years was no longer sufficient. Katya was indignant and pointed out that she had been wearing the same coat for 5 years. Nikolay responded by saying that she had to choose between going to nail salons or buying a new coat. Katya reminded him about their loan and utility bills, asking him who was going to pay for them. Nikolay shrugged it off, claiming that he didn't know much about the bills, and suggested that Katya should take a look at them herself, since she was the one who handled those matters. Katya's sobs echoed through the room as she bid farewell to her new coat. But her husband, unmoved, retreated silently into another room. "Stop being so hysterical," he shouted. "Go warm up dinner for me." The next day at work, everything seemed to slip out of Katya's grasp. After lunch, she summoned the courage to call her boss, Ivan Trofimovich. "Katerina, I can't make sense of it. Something seems off about you today. Are you facing any problems?" he inquired. "No," she replied softly, though her tears betrayed her words. "All right then, let's calm down," Ivan Trofimovich said, pouring a glass of water from the decanter on the table. He handed it to Katya and waited until she had taken a few sips before suggesting, "Now tell me." With the weight of her troubles becoming unbearable, Katya poured out her heart, finally finding solace in sharing her burdens. She had exhausted herself in pretending that everything was fine. "Do you have children?" the chief inquired upon hearing her story. "No," she confessed, her voice trembling. "I haven't dared to." Rightly so. With a husband like that, it's best not to bring offspring into the equation. But that's fortunate, Ivan Trofimovich exclaimed, his hand gently stroking Katya's as fear filled her gaze. "What I mean is, I can offer you assistance on your own. It would be more challenging with children. You see, our factory still has a dormitory, a relic from the past, one might say. The conditions aren't grand, but they are sufficient for living. One of our workers recently got married and moved out with her husband, leaving a vacant spot. I will write you a recommendation, but remember, time is of the essence. Others are in need as well." "Thank you, Ivan Trofimych," Katya said, wiping her tears. "But please don't refuse right away. Take some time to think it over." "Give it a week," the boss said, studying Katya closely. "And now, get back to work." Nicholas didn't speak to his wife and skipped dinner, as he usually went to his mother's house after work. Trying to reconcile, Katya bought some chops with the money she had left. However, Nicholas defiantly walked past the kitchen. But at night, while his wife was asleep, he sneaked in and took half of the meat from the tray. Katya noticed the missing meat, but said nothing, hoping that it would bring them closer. Just before lunch break, Ivan Trofimych rushed into the room where Katya and the other women were working. "Girls, I need your help urgently. We have to deliver some samples of our products to potential customers." The women exchanged glances and started to make up excuses, avoiding eye contact. However, Katya decided to assist the boss. "Ivan Trofimych, let me handle it," she said, standing up from her desk. The customers were impressed with the samples. They praised the products and promised to place a significant order. But what embarrassed Katya the most was one of the customers who complimented not only the products, but also her personally. He even walked her to the exit of the building. "Katya, can we meet again sometime?" he asked, quickly adding, "For business, of course." "Please come and visit us at the factory," Katerina beamed, her spirits lifted as she strolled leisurely toward the bus stop. Abruptly, her eyes caught sight of Nikolai, who was entering a nearby establishment with another man. Katya approached cautiously and examined the sign. It was a cafe. Peering through the expansive window, she observed her husband relishing the dishes before him with a hearty appetite. Determined to uncover the source of her husband's newfound dining funds, she entered the establishment and discreetly made her way to the table where Nikolai was seated. Preferring to avoid a public confrontation, Katya decided to eavesdrop on their conversation first, hoping that the man accompanying her husband might be treating him to a meal as a gesture of gratitude. The tables were separated by small partitions, and Katya settled into one of them. "The ribs today are exceptional," the stranger remarked. "Indeed," replied Nikolai, "but the salad is lacking in flavor, insufficient dressing and salt. It's just right for my taste." "I don't know," Nikolai hesitated. "You're being quite particular," the man chuckled. "Have you forgotten what your wife serves you for dinner?" "I no longer dine at home," Nikolai bragged. "Do you go to a restaurant then?" "No, I go to my mother's. She knows how to cook for a man, and I can't afford to dine out twice a day." "Hasn't Katerina questioned why you provide her with so little money?" the man inquired. "She does," Nikolai admitted. "She believes my salary remains the same as it was 2 years ago. She doesn't need to know how much I earn. Soon, I won't give her any money at all. She'll manage. The fact that she lives in my apartment is enough." "What if she decides to leave?" "Who needs her? She's got no substance and no character," Nikolai scoffed. As Katerina listened to her husband's disrespectful words, a fierce anger welled up inside her. She had sacrificed so much for this man, denying herself everything, and he had the audacity to speak about her in such a manner. Wiping away her tears, Katya emerged from her hiding place and sternly confronted her husband. "You're wrong, Kolya. I'm leaving you and filing for divorce," she declared, her voice trembling with determination. Kolya, however, swiftly regained his composure and dismissed her outburst as mere hysteria. "Come on, don't embarrass yourself. Just leave," he retorted, attempting to belittle her. Angered by his dismissive attitude, Katerina refused to back down. She turned her attention to the other patrons in the cafe, aware of their curious gazes fixed upon the unfolding spectacle. Without hesitation, she began to speak her truth. "Do you know why I look like a mess?" she addressed the onlookers. "It's because he spends his entire salary on himself. Meanwhile, I work 2 jobs, use my hard-earned money to pay the bills, the loans, and to feed this so-called thoughtful husband of mine. And on top of that, he expects me to provide for his pensioner mother as well, without considering the fact that her pension is meager, and if she feeds him, she herself will starve." With her declaration made, Katerina turned her back on her husband and exited the cafe, leaving behind a thunderous silence. Kolya couldn't resist one last attempt to demean her, shouting hysterical. But Katerina paid no attention, resolute in her decision to leave. Sitting opposite Kolya, a bystander spoke up, unable to stay silent any longer. "And truly, Kolya, you can't deny that your wife isn't spending all the money on herself. It's despicable that you're taking advantage of an elderly woman. Do you even contribute to her meals? I highly doubt it. You spend all your money on lavish meals and clothes, and you're even cheating on your wife." Caught off guard by the bystander's accusations, Kolya stumbled to defend himself, but the bystander was firm. "I don't need to listen to your excuses. It's clear that everything she said is true. I'm sorry, but I cannot sit at the same table as you." With those words, the bystander rose from their seat and walked away, leaving Kolya alone to reflect on the consequences of his actions. The man angrily threw some bills on the table before storming out of the room. Nikolay, consumed with fury, waited impatiently for the end of the workday so he could rush home. "Katya?" he yelled from the doorway, but received no response. Without even bothering to change out of his work clothes, he searched for her in the living room and the bedroom, but she was nowhere to be found. A sense of foreboding gripped him as he opened the closet, only to find his wife's belongings missing. Frantic, he raced to the kitchen, but there was no one there, just the keys to the apartment left on the dining room table. "Fine. We'll see how long you can keep this up. You'll come crawling back like a little child," he muttered angrily. Meanwhile, Katya stood before the mirror, admiring her new clothes. Since leaving her husband, she had been surprised to find herself with some extra money, which she had been saving diligently. Today, while putting a portion of her paycheck into a hidden box, she discovered a substantial stack of bills. Counting the money, she sat on the bed in disbelief. The new coat she had been eyeing had now become a reality, and the new boots were an unexpected bonus. "What's surprising you?" chuckled her roommate Svetlana upon seeing Katya's amazed expression. "Do you think Santa Claus put them there?" "Oh, I don't even know what to think," Katya whispered in awe. "Well, what's there to think about?" Svetlana replied. "We don't pay much for the dormitory, and you have no loans to worry about. You only need to feed yourself, and you eat like a bird. So it's no surprise that you've saved up so much. With just one paycheck, you could support yourself, but you're still working a second job. There's nothing to be amazed about." Katya and Svetlana decided to go to the shopping center together. They spent some time browsing and eventually settled on a coat and a pair of boots. After their successful shopping trip, they decided to celebrate with some ice cream at a nearby cafe. During their conversation, Svetlana slyly asked Katya if Roman would be joining them. Roman was one of Katya's clients, and he had been pursuing her romantically since she moved into her dormitory. Initially hesitant, Katya eventually agreed to go on a date with Roman under the influence of Svetlana's persuasion. Svetlana wanted Katya to see that not all men were like Nikolay, her ex-husband. Today was supposed to be their third date, and normally they would take a walk in the park. However, Katya had agreed to Roman's invitation to go to a cafe this time, showing her growing comfort with him. Meanwhile, Nikolay sat at a table in a restaurant, sulking and slowly eating his pasta. He had no money in his pockets, and a month after Katya left, he received a call informing him that his loan payment was overdue. The call mentioned penalties and demanded prompt payment. Nikolay was outraged by this news. He couldn't understand why Katya hadn't been paying for the loan, as it was registered under her name and she had kept the purchased item. Frustrated, he called Katya to scold her for her apparent negligence. Katya calmly responded that since the loan was registered in his name and the item was in his possession, she saw no reason why she should be responsible for the payments. She ended the call and disconnected. After some time, Nikolay found himself burdened with utility debts on top of his loan arrears. He had never considered who was responsible for paying the bills, and as a result, they had accumulated to a significant amount. It didn't help that Nikolay constantly forgot to turn off the lights and water, making the bills even larger. Feeling helpless, Nikolay used his salary to pay off his debts, leaving him with very little money left. He turned to his mother for support, but unfortunately she was not at home. She had been hospitalized because she had spent the majority of her pension on feeding her son, and was unable to afford the necessary medications for herself, leading to complications and hospitalization. Even the meals at his mother's house couldn't save Nikolay anymore. With his last bit of money, he bought the cheapest pasta available, desperately trying to make it last until his next paycheck, all the while cursing Katerina for their current situation. However, after a week of surviving on just pasta, Nikolay couldn't bear to look at it anymore. In an attempt to suppress his hunger, he decided to go for a walk. It happened to be his day off, and as he strolled through the town, he noticed that people were leisurely enjoying their day, visiting cafes and restaurants. To his surprise, while passing one of the restaurants, Nikolay spotted his ex-wife in the window. She was laughing along with a well-dressed man seated across from her. Overwhelmed with emotions, Nikolay quickly turned around and rushed back home, to the cold plate of macaroni waiting for him.